Hi everybody, my name is Brad, aka Twin Sticks and Ties, and today I'm giving you my first few hours or early review of the First Descendant. Now I have 5 main pillars for reviewing every game. Those are story, combat, environment and ambiance, graphics and visuals, and overall gameplay. And we'll give them a simple score out of 5. I'll talk a little bit about each one to keep this kind of light, snappy, and quick for you. At the end of every one, I'll give you a recommendation to either buy or play now, wait until a deal, or skip it all together. Here we go. The story for the First Descendant is fairly cliche. It's kind of like a direct rip from Destiny and the like, you're the chosen one. There's this overwhelming evil. You're the only one who can help. It's a little bit baked, and the Korean origin of this port is pretty thin, I will say. A lot of the dialogue I found to be pretty lost in translation and downright cringy at times, distractingly so. What I did find helped with this, though, is to switch to the Korean, the original voiceover, and just stick with the English subtitles. It actually helps with syncing because the original animations are set against the Korean VO. It actually let me focus more on the story, which wound up not being that bad over time, or maybe I just became numb to it. Tutorial guide and guide screens are really good for leading you through basic how-tos and getting your way through the game. It's very difficult to track in the story what actually is going on, though, so I didn't really get a lot of guidance on who the factions were, who the main players were, beyond like it's the Vargas or the Vulgus, and they're the bad guys. Ironhearts is the resource that everybody wants, and Descendants is us or the good guys, and it really doesn't go much deeper than that for most of the game. Story-wise, there's no real why or reason as to why you should be doing what you're doing or why you should care about these people. So without that, there's no drive to attach you to what you're doing in the game, if that makes sense. One point in the game, there's a sub-story surrounding a particular character, which comes completely out of left field and is really a good, kind of nice story. But it feels like it's on an island in the ocean of utter nonsense that the rest of the narrative becomes. Now, the story itself, for me, did take a backseat to the gameplay over time, and I was able to see past it and the cringy dialogue and just kind of enjoy the playthrough itself. But it wasn't enough to get me past a 2 out of 5 for story on the First Descendant. Now, I really did feel that the combat, after 5 minutes in and playing, I really started to like the feel of it, the flow, the mechanics. It was snappy, punchy. It felt heavy in a good way when it needed to, and it felt snappy and reactive when I wanted certain weapons to feel like they have more agility. I really started to enjoy the mobility and traversal as I got into the game, the grappling hook, rolling into and out of cover, rolling through dodges and stuff like that, using the environmental cover in the game to avoid and mitigate damage, really well thought out. And I liked the way that mobility played into the combat as a package to be more effective in those fights. It almost felt like a trimmed down Apex Legends style mobility with less tricks, we'll say. There's no stamina in the game, so there's no reason not to perma-sprint, which helps with traversal through the larger stages of the map. Boss fights are really cool with mechanics and options for breaking apart certain points on the boss, attacking particular weak spots. You can scale the bosses at certain points. It had almost like a Monster Hunter type vibe for big boss fights. And again, the gunplay is really snappy and responsive, intuitive, and it pairs well with the other abilities that your Descendant has. So it doesn't feel like you're completely dependent on guns or abilities. They really complement each other well. There are so many crafting, optimization, modding, and weapon and ability subsystems in the game that it can keep theory crafters and diehard metagamers happy for, I think, a very long time, dreaming up the best way to tweak and optimize loadouts, gun pairings, and complementary abilities across dozens and dozens of Descendants. I found the challenge in the game scaled really well. I never felt like anything was a cakewalk, and at the same time, nothing was so frustrating that it set me off the game. Of course, it's a looter shooter RPG, so if you feel like you're underleveled or underpowered, you can always just go and grind up a little bit more, farm something, or craft a new weapon, and kind of level yourself up there to curb your own challenge level. And I thought that was really well done. The missions and dungeons are really quick, easy, and fluid to get in and out of, and the matchmaking system is super easy. You just simply choose if you want to go in private or go in public, and it'll pair you up nice and quick. I love a good dungeon, and I like the instance group plays in this. The only gripe I have is if you're really behind the leveling curve, or you get matched with a bunch of bunnies, you can just feel like you're there to watch the light show and scoop up loot and just try and keep up with people as you're dragged. But all in all, great, epic, intuitive, and interesting combat. It felt rewarding and satisfying, and for that I give the combat score a 4 out of 5. For environment and ambiance, I felt like the traversal and mobility really helped me explore, and exploring was fun. The environments are really nice. They are kind of storied in their own terrain. Each one feels quite different, and they're beautiful, if not a little vacant. I felt like they were kind of empty until a mission was triggered or an event had started near you. The maps are very large, and they're split into smaller districts, which is kind of nice, so you can cut them into bite-sized pieces, and then you can fast travel between them using outposts or discoverable zone points. This gave the world and maps a feel of scale, but kept them small enough that you could travel to and from without feeling the need for mounts or any other kind of quick travel. Sprint and grapple are definitely your friend. It was actually kind of fun to swing and jump through the maps on foot. And then, of course, if you like to go on foot, you can go from zone to zone through Segway gates that are just a small loading screen. One thing that offset me about the environment was the kind of on the nose or plain naming of characters and locations and entities in the game, like Guide or Alpha is the leader. Regular people names like Nell, you know, it's just, it kind of takes you out of the fantasy element. I wanted something a little bit more interesting. It almost feels like they used placeholder names and then forgot to change them to something more interesting at launch. The verticality in the environments is really cool, especially with use of the grappling hook. There's really no limit that keeps you from exploring every inch of these environments, and that's always kind of cool. It was like a sandbox with a theme park baked into it. The mission launch points are little posts, basically, where you can elect into a mission to start it in either public or private mode. The integration's really nice and seamless, so you just go up to them in the game world itself, and the music is really good, creating this wave of intensity as things picked up or slowed down in between fights and leading up to boss fights. What I really liked about the integration too in the environment is it will show you an estimation of how long each mission or dungeon might take to do, which is great for busy gamers like me who might only have a few moments here and there to jump on and jump off. Beyond that, the progression overall in the game feels epic and hard-hitting. You have these great music stingers that punctuate special milestones and achievements, and I felt like it took just the right amount of time, not too long that it was super grindy, and not too short that the achievement felt cheap. For environment and ambiance, I gave The First Descendant a score of 3 out of 5. When it comes to graphics and visuals, the game kicks off with a really great intro cinematic, especially for a free-to-play game. As I was kind of taking in parts that truly were beautiful, I had to keep reminding myself that it was free to play, and I effectively paid nothing for this experience. The graphics tweaking in the options was a little tricky because the previews don't match the actual game, so you kind of have to guess and check, but it's not that hard to get through. As far as the game goes, I really like the graphics style and tone. It has a flavor of like Final Fantasy style cinematics and real kind of standard JRPG type visual style, which I like if you're into that. And it runs really well on my PC, which is pretty okay for a gaming PC, so I didn't really have to nerf anything down. It ran well, it stayed smooth, and it still looked beautiful. For graphics and visuals, I gave it a 4 out of 5. Finally, for overall gameplay, while I definitely have my gripes with the game, and I think it definitely has its high points, as far as a fun-to-play game that just has a couple of little hangs, I think it's good as a complete package. In fairness, I expected not to like this game. I'd watched a couple of frames from a few people playing. I wanted to go in blind, so I didn't learn anything about the game, but I did see some clips here and there, and I thought I was going to hate this game. But after the first hour, I found myself looking forward to coming back time and time again to continue the progression, to learn more, to experience more subsystems. Things that go into like weapon crafting and mod hunting and optimizing your descendant or character and collecting new ones. I think they've done a really good job of layering subsystems to keep people interested for a long time and paying for a long time. And I think those who are really interested in optimizing, tweaking, collecting, testing, and theory crafting are going to enjoy those subsystems as well. The multiplayer options are great, especially as a solo player. It's very easy to just jump into a group for larger challenges or select to go in solo when you want to just challenge yourself with a dungeon or just chill out and play through missions. Really easy to go either way without having to commit to a guild or a group time schedule, which I don't have the luxury of. And I know a lot of busy professionals like myself who still love to game don't have. So even with the cheesy, cringy, wafer-thin story hooks and dialogue, I was able to look past it eventually and really enjoy the gameplay and find that I could chill and get into it. So for that, I gave the First Descendant an overall and final score of 3 out of 5. I would say go ahead and buy or play it now, especially given that it's free to play. You really have nothing to lose. And if you know me, then you know my approach is if I get more than a couple hours out of it, then I'll put a small budget into the cash shop and buy myself a nice custom skin or something like that. But there's really no risk in trying it, so go ahead and give it a shot and let me know what you think. If you like this approach to reviews, if you're a busy professional like myself, please double tap for love, subscribe to the channel, follow me. There are going to be a lot more of these, and I'll keep bringing them.